Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm with the great Paul Ill. And we,
Great.
and we've been recording again. Yeah, well, at least he's wearing shoes.
Yeah.
We've been recording Daniel Powter, and he's been playing bass, of course, with Victor playing drums, and Daniel, of course, on piano. So we've been having a lot of fun, and what I wanted to do was ask Paul a little bit about his setup.
Okay.
Because you have a couple of beautiful basses today. This is one we've used many times before. I know we used this on Daniel's Happy Christmas War is Over cover.
That's correct. This is a 1962 Fender Precision body with a 66 neck that was sold in 1966 to someone, and I'm the third owner. It's a documented bass. It was bought at a guitar show in Dallas by a guitar trader friend of mine, and then offered to me because he knew I needed an old P bass for sessions. I'm using Labella flat wound strings. Set is, I think, D140F. They're a lot lighter than the set that you would get back in the 60s on a Fender bass, but they're the James Jamerson flat wound strings that we're all accustomed to hearing. They're very LA2A friendly. It's an alder bass, but it's very light. It's like as light as an ash bass, and it's one-piece body, and it was a factory second that when CBS bought Fender, they said, hey, let's get all those seconds out of the store. And it's the rareness of it is it's one piece body and it's very light. And I find that the lighter the instrument, the easier it is to record. People like the sound of the lighter instruments better, whether they're alder or ash.
And so this is basically how they put it together. They had an old neck sitting around and they stuck it on a 66.
Well, they had a 66 neck because it was 1966 and they had these old bodies sitting around.
So the older body.
Yeah, the older body was off because it was blemished or it didn't take a finish correctly. And the finish checking, that's the nitrocellulose. And when I first got it, it smelled like cigars. Either the first or second owner was a big cigar smoker. And it is set up by my friends at True Tone Music in Santa Monica. They do all my setups. I set my action a little higher than most people for recording, but I also play a little bit of upright bass. So, and then
you're
also
used to the fight.
Yeah, and also I find that when I play, I usually anchor my finger there. You can see the thumb wear there for most stuff, or here. And I do play this instrument with a pick. I use felt picks occasionally.
Right, nice.
And I use picks. I'm about 70-30 now on tracking dates, fingers to pick. It used to be 99% fingers, but in the past 5 years, I've been playing a lot more with a pick.
And tell us about this beautiful one.
Okay, this instrument is... It was basically an amalgamation of parts that I would collect on eBay. The body is somewhere between 1970 and 73. I had a 73 P-bass neck on it with a maple fingerboard. The pickup is a 71 Fender pickup that I bought online and then had Lindy Fralin rewind twice to match this particular LA 2A at Linda Perry's studio. She's like, I love this bass. It's great with round wounds. It's a little too hot. Send the pickup back to Lindy. Lindy rewound it. We did another track. She goes, oh, it's so close, man. Ask him to take it down. Again, set up and assembly by a guy named Matty Barada, who worked at Ibanez for a long time. But he moved on, and he has since returned to being a luthier. But for a while, he was just traveling the world, being a world traveler. And this instrument, I didn't want any finish on it. Right, so it just has a wood seal on it, and the neck is a jazz bass custom shop neck. If you notice, it's got the custom shop logo. What happened was, the 73 neck on this body and this neck on another bass that I didn't bring with me, a custom shop jazz bass. Both of them had a dead spot at E flat, right around here. You had a wolf tone, which is very common on Fender basses because this is 34 inches, and it's very common on cellos, on the high string on a cello too. You'll get a bad note here, and it's just the physics of the instrument and the diameter of the string. So my friends at True Tone said, hey, let's do an experiment. If you don't mind, swap the necks and let's see if the dead spots go away. And they got much better. You didn't complain at all today. And I did play quite a few E flats where the dead spot is, and I can feel it and hear it because I'm very sensitive to it, but it's an interesting trick to arrest a problem that's common with Fender basses. So, and I never bothered to have it refinished because initially my thinking was this was going to be my John Wetton bass, like King Crimson 71 to 74, the finish, and and brighter round wound strings. I use steel strings when I use round wound strings. I'm a Diodario string person, and I use standard 105 to 45 gauge, and the setups are True Tone has a lot to do with it. The setups, like for example, how they articulate the nut, and when they do an intonation for me, Like we had a little intonation problem today. It was because I was hitting too hard. I got excited, I think is what happened, probably.
We were having fun.
We were having fun. Yeah. But the instruments, generally, the lighter they are, the better they sound. In the booth over there, there's a 1974 Ampeg B15.
So we're here with the B15. We've got a FET 47 miking it up, which is probably 99% of the time what this is probably mic'd with. I mean, it's the sound of a kick drum or a bass guitar, and Norton FET 47. So this is a beautiful amp. We have it in channel 1. I know we messed around with it a little bit. I put your low and your high in, put the bass up, put the treble down a little bit, and when you initially set it up, it had a nice grind to it, which I loved. But then, what was it, the second track we did? It was like super, super clean. No, it wasn't. It was the first one, which will remain nameless.
Right.
The first track we were doing, second track for us because we did piano this morning, and we just pulled it down just a little bit. So there's still a little bit of grit coming from the amp, and it's still got that beautiful tube sound that we love, but it also sounds really fat. It's really, really warm sounding amp. So, and where did you find this?
Well, this came from California Vintage, and I told them that I was looking for a B15. It didn't have to be really old, checkerboard from the 60s or anything that had the XLR input for the speaker on the back. It's funny. It's interesting. I just said I need a good B15. This had been closeted, literally. It had been stored for 20 years, and somebody was doing sell stuff they weren't using anymore. And they're very reasonable at California Vintage. It's maintained by a gentleman by the name of Steve Deacon at Rock and Roll Doctor in Burbank, California.
Great.
And he does great work. He biases the amp.
Great.
And he checks my tubes for me, because you will wear out your power tubes in an Ampeg amplifier as fast as you will like a Marshall guitar amplifier.
Oh, wow.
For example, by other amplifiers I have, they don't wear as fast, but something about the circuitry of an Ampeg does that. Your settings are very interesting. I have a rule where I learned it from reading a Brian Eno book. I just I unpack, I plug in and wait, and I don't touch anything. Right. And it's like, maybe somebody will change something if they want to change it. I'll just leave it where it is, even if it's very strange and it got all moved around. Just leave it. It's like a mojo thing, like a superstition of mine.
Sure.
And they tweaked them very interestingly. This is what I like about the recording process and the creative synergy between musicians and producers and songwriters and stuff. I would have never set my amp like that. And I'm looking at it going, this is awesome. Now I can, take it back to my studio. I've memorized the settings, and jam with my friends or cut a track, and I'll try these settings. And I've never used it. Now, it's voiced. There's a couple of cool tricks with the Ampeg. It's voiced to do two things, because the reason these were flip tops, it's one of the great designs of the 20th century, like innovative, like we've got a little spare time. Let's show them. Pop it open, right? This pops open if you've never seen one of these before, right? And we're going to leave the speaker plugged in and everything, but we're just going to demonstrate to you. This pops open and you fold it in like this to travel, and then there's a handle on the back. Right. Now, interestingly enough, you can go like this and get a totally different tone.
Right.
Okay, and that's the original speaker. It's just a Jensen 15. And I think these amps are like 35 watts or something. They're not particularly efficient bass amps.
They reissued the amp a few years ago, and they didn't sell very many of them because the only people that love them are people like us who want them for recording.
Right, and then the other
They're never loud enough for shows.
The other cool thing about these that I learned from my friend Randy Ray Mitchell, who's a very prominent studio guitar player and producer here in LA, is that these actually do make for good guitar amps too.
Oh, they do?
You can, because it's kind of like, if you'll surprise yourself, because these are all voiced differently.
Right.
And if you do a little experimenting, you'd be surprised what the channels ostensibly are identical voicings, right? They respond to but the reason you have multiple inputs wasn't so four people could play at the same time.
Sure.
It was so that the amp would have multi-purposes for sale. Right. I can buy this amp and maybe, play guitar through it and bass through it, that kind of stuff. And I've never experimented with jumping the channels or any of that stuff, because generally the application for this is like what we were doing today, where I have to show up, and happily so, to be of service to the song. And I bring this and a bass with flat wounds and a bass with round wounds, a standard pack, like when we were exchanging information about the session, like, what do you think? And he said, flat wounds and round wounds, and check the track out. And I checked the track, and I don't have enough discernment as a recording artist to go, oh, that's just DI. So I always bring an amp just in case.
Absolutely.
And if Warren would have said to me, oh, Paul, it's just DI, we're not going to use the amp, You go, no problem. You just plug in and start going.
Sure.
You just keep embracing the creative process. And because you have to get a really good bass sound I've learned, and we had epic bass sound in here today. It was really good. This is an old API, and I don't know what you were using, the LA2A or whatever, but it was just a lot of fun for everybody to listen to, and it was very naked. It was just bass, piano, and drums. We were saying it was kind of like Elton at 11-10-70. And then I want to show you a couple of just a couple of quick ooh-ah factor basses that I brought that we didn't get to. I have a thing on sessions where I learned this from my dear friend Brian McLeod. Always bring one thing just in case you have a little extra time, or for a conversation with your friends. Like Brian would bring a stylophone. Like the first time I saw the stylophone synthesizer, the drummer on a session goes, "Hey, look what I got." It ended up on the track. But I tend to bring extra instruments.
Saxophones, omnichords.
Right, and just in case we have time to experiment, or also just for people to go, "Oh, that's cool, that's different.
Sure.
Let's talk about it." So you want to go in there?
We all got into music to have fun.
Yeah.
So tell us about these beautiful basses here, Paul.
Okay, these two I brought just in case we were going to go outside the standard P-bass, flat wound, round wound model. That is most of what I do when I'm called to make a record with somebody. These are my Telecaster basses that
look beautiful.
That are. This one is a 1968 custom order Fender Telecaster bass. Very rare. It's the heaviest bass I own. It's like an old Les Paul.
It's pretty heavy, yeah.
It's pretty heavy. And if you notice, it's got the nitrocellulose finish, the checking. It's a 68. This bridge was hand-tooled by Fender for this guy. This instrument I got from Ken at True Tone because he did an intervention on me. I was going to buy a Telecaster made by a modern person who copies vintage Telecasters, and he said, "No, I've got something for you." And he went to his storage and got this. It's string through. So it has a different sound. This instrument I use slightly lighter gauge strings on. Again, this is a Lindy Fralin replacement pickup for this because on these versions of the Telecaster basses, these were made in 67, 68, and 69 with old P-bass parts from the early 50s. So this body may be an old 50s body before they beveled it. Maybe not. It's probably made in 68 on the blank, when they put it and cut it. Let's make Telecaster basses. And I don't know the history of its ownership. I do know that it was made for someone in Bakersfield, ordered by Fender, because we checked, Ken's got enough mojo at Fender, we checked the serial number and said, yeah, it was a natural finish bass made by Fender with 4. These are usually, just like a Telecaster guitar, 2 strings per saddle. Mine has 4, and this is hand-tooled if you feel it. And you can see the tooling cuts on it that they did. They kind of made this for it because it had to have string through and everything. It's different than a bridge from them. So this instrument is really kind of growly. It's a ZZ Top instrument, basically. And with the pickup, it matches the output of a standard Fender bass, like a P bass or a jazz bass, instead of being a lot lower. Now, this instrument was made by a luthier named Manuel Aguirre, and he's a bass player. And this is Swamp Ash. You can feel how light this is. This thing is very distinct, and very resonant. And he made this bass and then decided. He got over it, and I was like, okay, it's mine if you want to sell it. This is one of my secret weapons. I have this on 4 or 5 basses. Well, I have it on many basses, and I also play a lot of piccolo bass in the jam band world. And I have a double neck bass, which is a 34-inch scale bass and a 30-inch scale bass that has Dark Star pickups. These are made by Fred Hammond. They're exact replicas of the Guild pickups that were on Starfire basses that Jack Cassidy and Phil Lesh used in San Francisco, and also Barry Oakley from the Allman Brothers put these on his jazz basses. So I have a jazz bass with one of these on it, like a clone of Barry's basses, and I've got 5 other basses that have these pickups on it. They're very, very loud output, very distinct, incredibly robust, like, wait a minute, man, whoa, what are you playing here? It's completely unlike a Gibson bass or a Fender bass. And this instrument is a very, very popular instrument with my friends when I play live. They really like the way this kind of fills up, because this sound is, especially in smaller ensembles like power trios or with my band, Disreputable Few, since it's just 2 guitars and bass and drums at this time, the guys really like this bass. And so these are these are the matching Telecasters. So for you guys out there, it's the ooh-ah factor. I brought these just in case we have a minute to experiment. Or if Warren said, hey, you got something different? Can we? Well, what do you got?
I definitely want to hear this now. Of all the basses, this is very exciting. There's been an interesting move with guitars. People are putting Gretsch pickups in Telecasters and the Guild pickups. we just get used to hearing sounds, and then somebody comes along and does something slightly different.
Right. The guitarist in Rising Sun's a really, really good band. It's quite popular in the UK and Europe, but they're from America. I believe he uses Firebirds with 3 of those Filtertron pickups on it. So
those are wonderful.
That's weird. But thank you for having me, man. It's always
Thanks,
a
man.
pleasure. Peace.
All right, so thanks to Paul. Please, as usual, go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list. Subscribe below, and thank you ever so much for watching.